Hi everybody, my name is Ben and I am a local guide and I specialise in outdoor activities and a particular interest in local heritage and the living and built environment. So I'm here today and I'm going to bring you on a virtual tour and I'm going to show you the sights and sounds of a wonderful native natural woodland. But not only that, I'm going to introduce you to some wonderful local residents whose uh, passion is only equalled by their knowledge for this wonderful woodland. So, without further ado, let's get going and let's meet our first resident, John. John, how are you doing, John? Nice to see you again. So, John, would you like to just maybe briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what we can see around us here in this place?
Thank you, Ben. Welcome everybody to. We're standing in Rathcoole Park at this
Okay.
point in time, and we're standing at the western end of it, and we're in a part of the park now that's a pollination designated section of the park. You'll see once you pan around in a few seconds, lots of flowers, and what else have we have here? In right behind me, you can see in the distance the hills of Rathcoole. It's
Okay.
called Wood.
Yeah,
The conifers, and you can see nice green fields below it. And we're also over, if you pan over to your right hand side, you can see within short distance all the houses of Rathcoole. So we're in a little midpoint between the village and the hills.
great.
And as I say, we're on the western part of Rathcoole Park. But right behind me, I want to talk about a place called Rathcoole Woodlands.
Brilliant. Okay.
So Rathcoole Woodlands is about 10 to 11 hectares in size, a small bit bigger if you take into account other little areas adjoining, and which is 11 hectares would be about 10 Croke Park Stadium. So
Wow,
it's a
okay.
significant size of ground.
Yeah.
But guess what it contains? 80,000 trees.
Fantastic.
Okay? So the woodland has developed over the last 25 years. It started off as a green field, a farmer's field, but didn't it have boundary ditches and internal ditches, and it had a stream running through it. And on all these ditches, wasn't there old trees typical like a country farm, trees sitting on these ditches, and then they all grow and become wild and sow their seeds into the fields themselves, because the fields no longer were farmers' fields. The fields now became property of the council, and it has just developed and developed over the last 25 years. Okay, so I'll just talk about the boundaries. Okay, so in the background we see the hills. Okay, so that's one of the boundaries. Then is the hills, and if you pull back from that, then there's some fields. So there's some fields between ourselves, the woodlands here, and the hills. And at this side, then the boundary is the village itself. Okay. So we have Colambra Estate, Beechwood Lawns Estate, Peyton, First Hills, Rathcoole Park. So we're in Green Oak. So we're right. This little nugget is right in the middle. Okay.
Right, very good. So will we start to take a walk?
We'll take a walk.
We'll walk and talk, as they say.
Yes, delighted, Ben, to lead us into the woodland.
Right.
And so here, if we want to stop for a second, we see a lovely willow tree, and you can see lots of white fuzzy stuff on it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
what's the fuzzy stuff?
The fuzzy stuff is like the seed of the tree. Okay.
Oh,
so, and it blows, a small bit of a breeze blows, and it'll land all over the park. So this is why the woodlands has self-propagated. It's rewilded itself. So it started off, you can imagine, on a boundary ditch, a woodland, a tree like this. And then all this mist, it's a bit like snow, and we'll see it further when we go in along. It's on the ground, it's hanging off the grass. It's unreal the way it self-propagates.
All right. So it's all kind of natural, organic growth.
Natural rewilded is how we describe it.
Rewilded, yeah. Very good. Okay. Will we motor on?
The woodland has a whole series of footpaths inside it, or They're man-made footpaths,
Okay.
or maybe fox-made, or the like.
Yeah.
But if you picture a woodland, the as I said earlier, the Tincroke Parks,
Yeah.
isn't there a split right through the woodland by a stream
Okay.
that feeds into the Camac River, which
very
of course
interesting.
flows
Okay,
into
yeah.
the Liffey.
Yeah.
And that particular stream is a kind of a guide, and there's one little or two little bridges over it.
Okay.
And it's a guide then for anybody so that they don't get lost if you follow the stream. Woodland is zoned housing development or residential.
Okay.
And it has been for years and years and years and years. It has been since the time that it was open field status. But now, of course, it has become a woodland. And it ticks a certain amount of boxes which the council are very proud of, such as green infrastructure, biodiversity, ecology. It does a lot of water retention type of good work for the village. You can imagine there's a lot of runoff off the hills of water. It actually retains all the water, and that's why you have such a remarkable piece of willow woodland here and hazel, because willow loves water. And so you'll see further on there's some springs, so there's more water comes out of the ground, not just off the hills, and we have 2 or 3 streams then that flow through the woodlands as well.
Fantastic.
So it also does huge well-being thing for say during the COVID lockdown. People walk their kids out here. They bring their dogs out here. It can be very sticky underfoot during the winter. But the paths from say the 1st of April to the end of September become really solid. Now the undergrowth starts to grow, as you can see, lots of high nettles here in the background, so you have to wear your long trousers. But as I said in an earlier piece, lots of nice footpaths this time of the year.
Great. Okay. Well, listen, John, look, that's been a fantastic introduction to the woodlands. You clearly are very passionate and knowledgeable about the woodlands, so thanks very much for that introduction. And so I believe the next person we're going to meet will be Deirdre. So thanks, John, and we'll move on, and we look forward to meeting you. So this is Deirdre, everybody. Hi, Deirdre, and I believe, Deirdre, you not only have a great interest in the woodland itself, but you know quite a bit about its history and how it's developed. So you might like to share some of that with us.
I will indeed, Ben. We could go back nearly 200 years to the Enclosures Act of 1818. And at that time, this would have been a commons. So that means it wasn't owned by anybody, and anybody could walk through it. But then that Enclosures Act, Crown at the time, were encouraging people to buy up the land, give them money, and close it off with hedges and ditches.
Oh, I see.
So Robert Latouche bought it for £500, and it was 23 statute acres. So what he did then, he made fields. So basically we won't see it now, but you'll see it later. There's one big field here. And it's always been a big field. And then there were actually 3 fields up here. But now there's only one. Again, you won't see it because, of course, since the last 30 years, you've had rewilding into woodland. So it would have been known as Broadmoor Commons at the time that Robert Latouche bought it. So then in 1948, Nicholas Stassen bought the land, and he cultivated with wheat. And I think it was Liga that he introduced to Ireland. So he farmed the land up until the mid-90s, at which point the council bought it, and it was left, which actually was very fortuitous because it meant you had the development of the woodland. And, rewilding is something that's mentioned an awful lot now. Because we're standing now on a bridge, actually. John has mentioned the Cool Mine stream. And that it flows right into the park. This is a first order stream.
Which means?
Well, what it means is that we're quite close to its source. So it rises about 2 fields above, uphill of us. And it flows directly into the park, forms the ponds. It goes under Fitzmaurice Road and joins the Camac. And as John mentioned earlier, head straight for the Liffey. So it's all belonged to the Liffey catchment. Yeah. And we now have the Water Framework Directive, which protects all our rivers.
Very good.
And aims to make them good quality.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. And so Deirdre, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about this pathway?
Yeah, Ben, this pathway is actually mapped out in the old maps starting about 1912.
Okay.
So it would have been the path that the workers in Rathcoole took to head over to Saggart.
Okay.
So this is a blackthorn lined path. And what's really interesting is that it's still here today. So somehow, in cultural memory, people still walk this path.
That's amazing.
It is. It's astonishing really when you look at the old maps. And what they did then was they'd come to the top and they actually crossed over the river that's up there, which is the Cruickshank.
Okay.
And would have gone the other side as they headed over to the mill.
Okay.
But they would originally have come right from the village of Rathcoole and come up diagonally across what was a field then at the time, which is now a woodland.
Oh, I see.
So you can't really track the path through the woodland anymore.
Yeah.
But you certainly can from the bridge to here.
Very good.
So hi, I'm Annie Flynn. I'm a campaigner for Rathcoole Woodlands. We think this is a tremendous resource and we would like these woods and these grassy areas to remain. So now we're kind of almost in high summer, if you like. So what we see here is one of the grassy areas. These areas are great for biodiversity. I often hear frogs as I take a walk through the grass. And the moths and butterflies as well will all use the plants here to lay their eggs on or to feed on the nectar. So very important for our local biodiversity, insect life. And we have about less than 10% of Rathcoole Woodland is actually grassland. So it's very walking friendly and also a very nice place to have a little picnic and sit down and relax with your family. Yeah.
Lots and lots of willow trees. It's probably the predominant tree in the woodland, and but there's also lots of different types of willows. So would you like to just tell us a little bit more about the willows that we find here?
Yeah, the willows we have here, we're very happy. We've native Irish willows, and they're the most abundant tree you'll find when you come to the woodland here. So here we have one willow in leaf, beautiful tree, and you'll see the very pliable nature, kind of reminding us about the basket weaving that was done with willows for many years in Ireland. The willows, you'll see as well if you look closely, have been eaten by insects. So we know that these willows are helping our insect populations to thrive. And this is important for the bats that would feed here and for other insects. What else will I say about willow? I suppose the key thing, two key things about willow. One is it loves wet land. So we know that Rathcoole Woodland is a wet woodland, and this is how it's characterised. And this is a very important and special habitat, so it's protected in EU law. And the willow is vital for our bees early in the season when the catkins emerge and produce pollen and nectar. And this allows the first bees that come out of their hibernation to survive and to help breed the new bees for the next year. So a critically important tree.
We're here at the hawthorn bush. So tell us a bit about the hawthorn, Annie.
Yeah, again, we're really proud that we've so many native tree species to Ireland here in the woods. So two that you'll see when you come here are the hawthorn, which we have here, a beautiful native Irish tree, a great tree for nesting birds, a tree which has thorns, and we're just seeing the end of the Mayflower there. If you come here in October, you'll see these trees are laden with the haws, the berries which feed all our native birds and small mammals too.
And here we have the hazel. Now I know from our own heritage that the hazel is one of the 7 nobles of the woodland or forest, the Arig Fado. So Annie, tell us a bit about the wonderful hazel tree.
Sure. The hazels in Rathcoole Woodland incredibly date from 1760. So we have seen maps where hedges of hazel have been recorded at that time. So a number of specimens in the woodlands date from over 200 years and have that age. And wonderfully, the hazel, as you know, it produces a nut, and that nut contains the seed for a new hazel tree. So we have a fabulous natural regeneration of hazel in the woodlands here. We have a large number of young hazel trees which are growing by birds and mammals, really, moving them around to different areas.
Yeah, and you've got a sample there for us.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I like to collect these, and you can see each of them have a slightly different sized hole, and different birds and different mice will have their own particular way of opening to get to the ripe fruit inside. And also sometimes they forget where they leave some of these nuts, so they are then there to grow as new young trees. I love the hazel. I think it's the most exciting part of this woodland in Rathcoole.
Fantastic. So Annie, you've spoken a lot about the flora, but also, of course, let's not forget about the fauna. And also, I believe there's some nice walks through the woodland also. So tell us a bit more.
Yeah, Ben. I suppose foremostly this woodland is a wild wood, and it's a wild wood which is inhabited by wild animals. So our campaign group have beautiful footage. We know we've had badger families on site, we've had deer, we've had rabbits. We know there are dragonflies that fly and hunt over the water areas here. And we know we have at least 5 species of bats. So if you see the silver willow behind me, here we have a bat box. And over this year, we've been recording bats, and we've also been looking at where they can roost in trees. A lot of the wood here, some of it is old and decayed, so crevices and openings are ideal for Irish bat species. Come here, see the wonders that are here for yourself. If you're from Saggart or Rathcoole, Newcastle, indeed any of the surrounding areas, come and walk here and see what you find. Check in with our social media for the public walks we'll be running this summer.
Yeah, Ben, we're right here in the middle of the woodland.
It's beautiful.
And this is actually priority annex habitat woodland, alluvial woodland. So it's priority because on a European scale it's rare.
Yeah.
It might not be rare nationally. It's protected under the Habitats Directive. And it's alluvial because it's wet. So it only forms where there is wet ground. As John mentioned earlier, that's why we have loads of willow. So all around here are willow trees, multi-stemmed willow trees. Now woodlands have a particular structure. This is the oldest part of the woodland. Well, it's not quite the oldest, it's one of the older parts, so it's quite mature. So you have canopy, which is the top trees, and in this case they're the willow trees. And then you have understory trees, and we're very lucky here, right beside, to your left, is an elder tree. So that's the understory tree, so that's a young elder.
Very nice.
And then you have the field layer, so you have things like maples and sunflowers and thistles. And the very bottom layer there is the ground layer. So we never really think about how soil is formed. So in the ground layer, you know, the mushrooms and bacteria and insects change all this into soil. That's why you don't have a build-up of leaves year upon year and grown on the trees. And Dr. Rory Hodd did a survey of the mosses in the woodland, and he found 51 species, which we were quite surprised. 2 of them haven't been commonly recorded. One of them, I think it's about 50 years since it was recorded in Dublin, and the other one actually wasn't previously recorded in Dublin. So mosses grow where it's damp. They need moisture, and they'll grow anywhere. Yeah. He recorded them on the trees, recorded them on the stream bank, on the cars that are in the woodland, concrete. Yeah. So they grow everywhere. And the last thing I'll point out here, because I've come in here before, and it's the ivy.
Yes, there's loads of ivy all over, on the ground and on the trees as well.
Yeah. The thing is, that's very good for frogs. I've been in here a couple of times. And frogs. It's because it's damp and sheltered under it.
Okay.
So frogs don't spend all their time in water. They only come to spawn in water. Okay. The rest of the time they have to live in damp undergrowth. Okay. And this is really a good area for them. And it's good to look at this area because if you go to see other parts of the woodland, it doesn't look like this. So it's a great mosaic of different woodland type. Yeah.
Very good.
Now, Ben, we're here at the springs in the woodland, and I'm just going to bring you around to your right, because believe it or not, you're standing right beside where water comes out. Mightn't look like it, but when the water table rises, water comes out of there. But at the moment, the water table's a little bit low, and if you just take a peek down there, you can just see the willow seeds sitting on top of the water there. So it's literally just below the roots of the willow. Oh. Again, big association with water. Now there happens to be several springs along here, right? Yeah. And there's 2 reasons they might be here. Well, first reason obviously is the water table rises and the water has to get out. But the second thing is, in the old maps, they describe a river coming down between the middle fields. So there's a guy called Ivrin, and for the moment his first name escapes me, and he wrote about...
I think, is it? Liam Ivrin.
Actually, it could be Liam, because he wrote about the place names in Rathcoole. Yes. And he makes big reference to water. Yeah. And there was water all around the commons. If you remember, I referred to Broadmoor Commons. Yes, And Broadmoor actually apparently refers to the big stream, even though streams aren't particularly big. Okay. But anyway, there was a stream coming down this way. Yeah. So what could have happened is that to make this big field, when it was agriculture, that the stream was put underground. Oh, okay. That it was buried and covered over. Okay. But over time, it's making its way out again. So you have the springs. So they're springs anyway. It doesn't really matter how they arrived here. Okay, But the whole point, the whole thing is it's water. It's all water led. Yeah. So you've one here. Yeah. This one, there's actually one there. That actually pumps really good. But we're kind of still fortunate that there's still some flow because we've had quite a couple of weeks of dry weather. Right. Here, so if it's really dry, you'll get no water. Yeah.
So you see a little pool here.
There's a little pool here now. The dog has just recently been through here, and that's why it's cloudy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's clear, and you'd see water shrimp in it, and I think that's fool's watercress possibly, but a botanist would be better able to tell you. So all the green that's growing in it, actually you can. Well, I can see it flowing from this point. You can hear the flowing. So the actual spring itself, in this point, is up there. Yeah. But it's all along the same line. So if we head down here, it flows obviously into the Cool Mine stream that we saw earlier, that was in the park at the bridge, and now you'll see a completely different view of it.
Right, let's go.
And if you keep following the path around to your left, and then what you'll see is a pond on your right before it enters the Cool Mine stream. Now, you'll love this view. This is probably most people's most favourite part of the woodland, and it gives you a great example. These are moss covered trees because it's wet, massive ferns.
Beautiful, very peaceful here. So this is the Cool Mine stream?
Still the Cool Mine stream, yeah. So it originally, believe it or not, flowed down the old passageway, and again I think it was diverted in to dry up that passageway in some way. Okay. To join the existing stream that was already here. Okay. Right? Yeah. So it flows right through, as John said earlier, through the middle of the woodland. And today you can see the hogweed over there. It's not the giant hogweed now.
Okay.
But all hogweed irritates your skin anyway.
Okay.
And massive ferns, and they're there all year round. And if you turn around to your right, you'll see a different type of fern.
That's a fern, isn't it?
That's a fern, yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
I think it's called the Heartstone fern.
Okay.
And the pond is quite low because we've had dry weather.
Yeah.
And it flows off in to the Cool Mine stream. But it's an absolutely gorgeous spot. It's one of the best places. The springs and this spot is by far the best place scenic-wise in the woodland. And then we have the Rathcoole.
Okay.
So that's where Rathcoole gets its name from.
Well, explain that one a bit.
Right. Well, legend has it
Yeah.
that Fionn McCool's father
Okay.
built his rath here.
Ah.
And it would have been the far west end of the woodland.
Yeah.
Across where there is what we call the winding passage, which is a
Okay.
double ditch.
Yeah.
But what they suspect has happened, of course, that with time and establishing the ditch,
Yeah.
that it went through the rath and the material was reused.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So it's not there
It's not
anymore.
really evident, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there's trees, so you
Yeah.
know there was a house actually
Yeah.
once in this.
Yeah.
There's another map around, I think the mid 1840s or so.
Yeah.
There's an indication of a house. Well, there's no indication of a house here.
Or,
Probably across actually because
Yeah.
they reckoned that it was across the passage that they
Yeah.
put the passage up through it. So the passage is just across from those trees. If we go down a bit further, you'll actually see.
The start of the passage.
Well, that's the start. It's one ditch and the other ditch.
It's like a double ditch.
Double ditch. It's actually a river valley. There's two rivers flowing down there. There was. Yeah, and they pulled one of the rivers into this field that said dry that out. So you see here, Ben.
So you can actually access there if you like. It's the first kind
You
of
can
place
see
that
how
isn't
very high the ditch. Again, I remember I was saying about the drainage ditches, and that's very high there.
incredibly high, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
wow.
So
More than
that's
2
just
meters, isn't it?
that's one ditch, and then there's the passage, and then there's another ditch.
There's a passageway then just beyond that ditch, Ben,
Yeah,
which you
literally.
can't see from here. And then there's another ditch at the far side of that.
In fact, there's like an animal track if you like. You can see the mud and you can see the roots.
Oh, yeah, you
of,
can
of
see
the,
out
of the
through
tree. So there's obviously a way to kind of
Yeah.
in and out
So
of
you
there.
can imagine there's an old pathway along there, unused at the moment. So it's grassed over and weeded.
Yeah, this is it.
So, hi Michael, how are you? Pleased
Fine.
to meet you.
Yeah, delighted to be here in this beautiful setting, this woodland that has come to fruition. It has taken roughly 30 to 40 years to get to this stage. I
And of
believe
course you've seen it all, haven't you?
I've seen it all, yes. I took up residence just down the road behind us here in 1972, and out where we're standing now was all green fields where wheat was grown. I saw the combine harvesters, etc., etc., etc.
Wow.
And then it was taken over, a compulsory purchase order,
Yeah.
and by default it was just left there. And the next thing, we have this amazing growth of trees and everything that you see all around here. Being a former teacher, I have a special interest in what it can do for the children of the area and for the schools. I could see projects here galore for every class to visit, to come in. There's geography. We have the beginnings of the Cammach River here. There are springs that flow into the Cammach, which flows then into the Liffey. We have history. We have Coole's fort, Finn McCool, Rathcoole.
Yeah.
We have the pathway leading from the village here across to the mill, on which the first, the proclamation, I believe, of 1916 was first printed. Then you have the plethora. I mean, it is just like an oasis here. It's a treasure chest of nature. I get up in the morning at 5 o'clock. I hear the bird song. It has to be seen to be believed, or heard to be believed here. In the evening time, they're still at. So there's canopy here and cover for thousands and thousands of birds. So taking that into account with all of the animals that are around the place, not that long ago we saw 2 deer just across the way here. I'm sure they were coming down to visit the woodlands and to maybe make it their home. Plus foxes, plus badgers, plus hedgehogs, plus etc., etc. So, in other words, the Greeks have a saying that a society becomes great when people plant trees under which the shade they will never sit.
Very good.
Now, we are at the first stage of coming to a forest right here, all around us, and I won't see it, but that doesn't mean that I don't want the next generation to see it and the generation after that to see it. It is a fantastic amenity, and we must preserve it, and we must get the County Council to help us to develop it into picnic areas, into nature trails, for the use of not only the adults but for the children as well, and their children down the road. I'm just so passionate about it. It would be an abomination if this were destroyed. We've got to preserve it.
Yeah, so that's great, Michael. Yeah, and I think your passion obviously is very obvious and evident.
Yeah.
And so look, in summary, it's kind of, I suppose, from an education point of view, it has everything. I mean, there's history.
It has got everything.
There's ecology. There's the nature. There's everything.
It has got everything. I mean, what I would love if I were a teacher in the class now, if I had a sixth class at present, I would be bringing them up here with the project. And we would identify all the trees, we would identify the pathway going through, we would get to the source of the springs where, as I said, leads into the Camac. What more do you want for children in Dublin to find their roots and to buy into their roots and to develop a love? Because for certain, I know, out of all of this could come, careers for people, for children as well.
Absolutely.
If they're brought out, I mean, I know of many people who what was done in a primary school for them has led on to careers that they had a love for, or that was, the teacher brought them out somewhere, showed them what was available, and they just bought into it. They said, I just love this. And that's what I envisage, and I hope it comes to fruition.
Yeah. Well, listen, Michael, that's fantastic. You're obviously a great advocate and very passionate about it. So that's a fantastic contribution. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
So I hope you all enjoyed your evening with us in Rathcoole Woodland. I certainly did. And if you're a relative blow-in like me, or from far, far away, or indeed like the folks that we met earlier, a dyed-in-the-wool local, I'm hoping that you all got something to take out of our evening, whether that's something new that you didn't know before, or maybe some ideas of some activities to do, like perhaps come and visit the woodland yourselves if you're living in the area, or even passing through, or maybe explore and discover a woodland in your own area. But I have to say that I must really give a big thank you and shout out and a word of appreciation for the really warm welcome I received from the local residency, and for so willingly and generously sharing so much of the vast wealth of knowledge that they have of their local woodland. And I'm kind of thinking that it's perhaps instructive that, for a little over a human generation, a land area that was not unintentionally left fallow for, as I said, over a human generation, that it has developed naturally and organically into this native woodland that we have today. And not only that, but the tree species that have developed and grown here are all native trees that have existed in Ireland for thousands of years. And it really kind of gives us cause to pause and reflect, I guess. And as Michael so eloquently put it, I mean, what we cherish today will be of benefit to the generations to come in the future. But of course, like all societies, we need to survive and thrive as well. So how do we marry the two? And perhaps we could do worse than refer to one of our ancient Brehon laws in Ireland, which says "Na tóg, na tóach, agus úsáid chuile táach," which means don't take more than you need and use all that you take. gur maithagaí a gcaine uisle agus slán go fáil. Thank you everyone, and goodbye for a while.